You just heard the front door click shut for the last time. Your spouse packed a bag, walked out to their car, and drove off into the night. You're standing in the living room looking at the walls, and a terrifying thought hits you. Are you about to lose your house too? It's exactly that fear that keeps people awake at midnight after a separation. The house is the biggest purchase you'll ever make. It's where you built your life. When a marriage falls apart, the fight over the property gets ugly fast. But before you panic, you need to understand how the law actually handles this. Because the way you think it works, based on what your friends say, is probably wrong. Let's follow a guy named Mike. Mike works as a machinist. His wife, Sarah, just left him. They bought their house 3 years ago. Both of their names are on the deed. The deed is the actual physical piece of paper, or the official county record, that proves who owns the property. Because both of their names are on that document, Mike assumes they automatically have to sell the house and split the money right down the middle. He thinks Sarah can force him out by Friday. That's not how it works. When a divorce starts, a court issues an automatic temporary restraining order. This isn't a restraining order because someone was violent. It's a legal freeze. It means neither Mike nor Sarah can sell the house, cancel the homeowner's insurance, or drain the bank accounts until the divorce is officially settled. The court hits the pause button on your entire financial life. Mike doesn't have to pack his bags. He can stay in the house. But who actually gets to keep it when the dust settles? That depends on a few massive factors. The first thing a judge looks at is how the property is classified. Property falls into 2 categories: separate property and marital property. Separate property means assets you owned before you got married. It also includes things given to just one spouse, like a personal inheritance from a grandparent or money from a personal injury settlement. Marital property means almost everything you earned, bought, or acquired while you were married. Now, some states treat married couples like a single financial bucket. These are called community property states. In community property states, the law assumes both spouses own everything acquired during the marriage equally, 50-50. Other states use a system called equitable distribution. In these states, the judge doesn't just split things in half. They try to divide the property fairly. Fairly doesn't always mean exactly equal. So let's look at Mike's situation again. He bought the house with Sarah while they were married. Neither of them owned it before the wedding. The money used to pay the monthly mortgage came from Mike's paycheck as a machinist. That makes the house marital property. Because the house is marital property, the court has to divide it. But Mike worked hard for that house. He doesn't want to sell it. He wants to stay. Can the court just give the house to Sarah instead? Yes, it happens all the time. Judges have a lot of power to decide what is fair, but usually they look at a few very specific things to figure out who gets to stay. The first thing the judge looks at is who is taking care of the kids. If Mike and Sarah have young children, the court wants to keep the kids' lives as stable as possible. They don't want to pull kids out of their school district or move them away from their friends. If Sarah gets primary custody of the kids, Sarah will probably get the house. It's not because the court likes Sarah better. It's because the court wants the kids to stay in the house. The second thing the judge looks at is pure math. Can one person actually afford to keep the house? Let's say Mike wants the house. He goes to the judge and says he wants to stay. The judge looks at Mike's pay stubs. Mike works a lot of overtime to make his money. His base pay isn't that high. The monthly mortgage payment, the property taxes, and the homeowner's insurance eat up almost all of his base pay. If Mike loses his overtime, he won't be able to pay the bills. The judge will look at that and say no. The bank only cares about the contract they signed. If Sarah stops paying the mortgage 3 years later, the bank will go after both of them. The bank will destroy both of their credit scores. So if you're in Mike's position and you're giving up the house, you have to make sure the other spouse actually refinances. You can't just take their word for it that they'll make the monthly payments. You need the court order forcing them to take your name off the loan. Now let's change the scenario completely. What if Mike bought the house a year before he even met Sarah? What if he used his own savings for the down payment? What if only his name was on the deed? Does Sarah get half of the house anyway? This is where it gets complicated. The house started as separate property, but during the marriage, they used Mike's paychecks to fix the roof, update the kitchen, and pay down the mortgage. Mike's paychecks are marital property because he earned them while married to Sarah. When you mix separate property with marital property, the law calls this commingling. Commingling means mixing funds or assets together until they can't be easily separated. Because Mike used marital money to improve Sarah's separate property, she might have a legal claim to a portion of the house. She won't necessarily get half the value of the house, but she might get the value of the kitchen renovation and the roof repair, or she might get a percentage of the equity based on how much the mortgage was paid down during the marriage. Courts have complex formulas to figure this out. Let's look at one more twist. Let's say neither Mike nor Sarah can afford to buy the other one out. Let's say Sarah's job barely covers her own bills. Mike's paychecks won't support the house on his own. Neither of them can qualify for a new mortgage to refinance. What happens then? The judge will look at the situation and realize nobody can afford this house. The judge will order the house to be sold. This is a forced sale. A real estate agent puts a sign in the front yard. The house sells to a stranger. The bank takes their money to pay off the old mortgage. Whatever cash is left over, meaning the equity, gets split between Mike and Sarah according to the judge's orders. It's brutal. It means losing the house anyway, but it's the cleanest break when two people can't afford the life they built together. Now, Mike had a bad habit. He wanted to save money. He thought lawyers were too expensive. So Mike stayed up late reading internet forums. He read advice from a guy in a completely different state. Mike printed out some forms he found online and tried to use them. He thought he could just handle the divorce himself to save a few bucks. That's a trap. Divorce laws are incredibly specific to where you live. The exact percentage a spouse might get from commingled property in California is completely different from the rules in New York. The timeline for forcing a house sale in Texas is different from the timeline in Florida. Even the definition of separate property shifts from state to state. If you rely on generic internet forms, you might accidentally sign away your right to your own home. You might end up stuck on a mortgage for a house you haven't lived in for a decade. This is a highly complicated process. You're dealing with the biggest financial asset of your life. You're dealing with debt that can bankrupt you. You shouldn't navigate this alone. You need to talk to a local family law attorney. A local attorney knows the judges in your county. They know the local rules. They can look at your specific deed and your specific paycheck and tell you exactly how your local law applies. They can fight to get you the equity you deserve or fight to keep you in the house if that's the right move. Don't risk your financial future to save a little cash up front. Laws change constantly, and they're different everywhere. The specifics of your situation will dictate what actually happens. Think about the people in your life who might be facing this exact nightmare right now. Send this video to a coworker or a buddy who is stressing out about their living situation after a breakup. Make sure you subscribe to Scribble Law so you always have a solid guide when life throws a heavy legal problem onto your kitchen table. If you had to walk away from your house today, what's the one thing you'd grab before you lock the door? Let me know down in the comments.